Hello and welcome. This short recording is going to give you an overview of Chapter 3 in the Bamford and Brewerton text on entrepreneurship. Chapter 3 is the third and last chapter of the first section of this textbook. The first section of this textbook is all about laying the groundwork, and Chapter 3 in this text is all about generating business ideas and that initial evaluation step associated with the business ideas that you identify. Okay, so let's share the screen here and let's get going. All right, here we go. Here we go, Chapter 3 from Bamford and Brewerton. Right, so in this chapter, we begin with identifying a systematic way to generate a list of potential business ideas. And then we take that list of ideas and we use gap analysis as a tool to evaluate those ideas. The final part of the chapter is devoted to making the business choice, including the analysis of potential risks and threats associated with that business choice. So here's a suggested approach to develop a quality business idea. First of all, look at your own self. What personal skills do you offer? What personal skills do you have that you're willing to put to work? We can also take a different approach that's not about the individual. Instead, it's about the marketplace. Look for gaps in the market. Identify market opportunities where there are unmet needs. And then when we look at these two lists, our individual skills, market opportunities, then we compare our ability to fill those gaps. Now, it goes without saying that whatever business you take on, you're going to have the necessary skills and the depth of understanding to build a long-term advantage in the marketplace. But it's not all about just you. Maybe you're collaborating with one or more others to do this business. And that's a worthwhile consideration, because what you bring to the table and what a potential partner brings to the table together may create something more than what you alone or they alone could actually achieve. So this is referred to as synergy. And an easy way to understand synergy is to say 1 + 1 = 3, right? So the advantage of you working with this other person is that you get to pool your skills, and what you could achieve alone or what they could achieve on their own is less than what you can actually achieve together. So the sum of the parts of your business structure, the two partners, the two founders coming together, when they come together, the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts alone. This is synergy. Now, skills are idiosyncratic to the individual. What does that mean? It means that skills are particular to the person. And specific areas for skill identification include your interests, your hobbies. What education have you completed? What's your work experience? What's your family values? What's your family history? So we're going to look at each of these in turn. Okay, let's start with hobbies and interests and activities. Whatever it is that you like doing, it involves skills. So the potential business owner should ask, what interests, hobbies, or activities do you enjoy? Are you actively engaged in? Are you actively engaged daily, or maybe for longer term, over an extended period? What hobbies, interests, and activities are you interested in? Do you pursue? Do you spend time on? What's exciting about these particular interest, hobbies, or activities? What skills do they require? What have you learned that would help others in engaging with these interests and skills? And when you are actively engaged in such interests and skills, what products, what services do you use? So your hobbies, your interests, your activities can impact how you actually approach a business venture. Let me ask, do you have any hobbies that might lend themselves to a solid business idea? Only you know that, and because only you know what you're interested in. What about your education? And the question of education can be considered broadly in terms of formal education qualifications, but also informal learning experiences, because these two are another source of business ideas. So what aspects of your prior education did you particularly enjoy? Was there specific courses that you would like to know more about? Was there informal learning experiences that you feel like you'd like to develop more? Which learning journeys were very exciting to you, were very enjoyable to you? Where did you get lost and needed to do more work on? Have you done any unusual education programs? Have you done any specialized trainings? And if you had to do it again, would you? Or would you go off in a different direction? So just like our educational background enables us to take on or to consider specific business ventures, so too does our work experience. So in each job that we undertake, individuals build skills that they take with them when they leave the organization. So we as in managers, scholars, we refer to this as tacit knowledge walking out the door. And an individual leaving an organization can be a great loss to an organization. An even bigger loss when that individual takes that tacit knowledge and starts a new business. So what organizations have you worked for? What skills did you develop in that role? Can you turn that into a business? What skills were critical to the roles that you were performing and the responsibilities that you held? Can you turn that into a business? What positions did you hold? Do you have managerial experience, or are you not interested in managing a team? In what areas would you consider yourself a type of expert? Or where are the areas that you feel like you need to develop your expertise a little bit more? What frustrated you? Maybe you need to steer clear of that. Okay, so when we start our own businesses, we get to define the parameters of what work we do. Now, family is often an overlooked source of skills for a new business. Does your family history include business? What types of travel does your family do? Maybe not in the COVID context, but previously. What are the skills that exist within your nuclear family, your immediate family? What about the extended family? Are there financial resources that you can draw on? Or again, business expertise? Are there unique things in your family that others seem very interested in? And maybe that's a window of opportunity. What skills have you developed from the family context, the family activities? So your family can actually be a great help in developing a business. The question to consider is, what are some of the risks and rewards that you associate with the idea of working with your family? And of course, dynamics, relationship dynamics, relational dynamics is something very important to consider there. Here's a few more questions. What are your top 3 personal skills? What are you really good at? What do you like doing each day? What's the one thing that you look forward to during the week? In the past year, what have you enjoyed doing most? In the past year, what have you enjoyed doing the least? What do you spend your time doing? Are you reading magazines? Are you reading books? Are you looking at specific websites? Are you on particular platforms more intensely than others? What are your greatest accomplishments? What can you build on with regards to these accomplishments? What about your social skills? Do you like other people? Do you like working with other people? Would you prefer to work alone? And then let's go more specifically into industry. What's your preference? What do you want to be involved in? Here's some more questions to tailor the business to your unique skills. The goal is to explore the range of potential skills, abilities, and knowledge that you possess, and then to build on that. All right. So the question of people again. You know, do you like other people, or do you not want to work with other people? Do you have a high level of detail orientation or not? Do you work more from your gut instinct, your intuition, or with facts and figures? Are you trained in the area in which you want to work, or do you have to actually establish that particular competencies to do well in the field that you've chosen? And how do you consider your level of resistance to change? So are you willing to change quickly and easily, or do you have a high level of resistance to change? Okay, so let's consider our skills analysis for the individual to be complete. Now we move on to the gap analysis. So this is a relatively simple process of systematically examining the difference or the gap between expectations and reality. So we look at opportunities in the marketplace side by side with the skills that you bring to the table so that we can identify any gaps that will need to be filled. So how do we identify these gaps? Well, we look at market trends, industry trends, macro trends. We interview local entrepreneurs, key successful local entrepreneurs. We discuss with our inner circle of influence, our immediate family and friends. We look for environmental changes that create opportunities, technological innovations, for example, demographic shifts, for example. Brainstorm, all right? So we can either individually or with a team of people work together to generate potential gaps. And we look at daily frustrations. Okay, and then another way that we can identify gaps in the marketplace is to look at patent files. Here's a hyperlink to the US Patent Office. Many patents are actually taken out, but not acted upon. And so you can look at these patents to help you to generate ideas and to identify gaps. So how do we choose a business? Well, we've talked about the generation ideas, and selecting the business takes time and frequent interaction. So this link here takes you to nearly 1,000 business ideas for you to consider and various articles of interest in this regard. When we work with completing a gap analysis. In the first instance, we might have several ideas, but we need to identify one to focus on to begin with to complete the analysis. So you might begin with one idea and get a few steps into the analysis and then think, no, okay, this is not working, so let's go back and start with another idea, and we start the gap analysis over again. So gap analysis requires focus, time, and financial investment, because you've got to focus on one idea at a time. And what I'm talking about here is identifying one business idea through which to conduct your gap analysis. So how do you decide that a sufficient business opportunity exists and that you have the resources necessary to take advantage of that opportunity? Well, use your list of the top 3 to 5 business ideas and develop a chart that examines the issues that might impact that success. This form, which goes over, oh no, it's only on one slide. Okay, so some people in your business network that have a higher level of experience and have been established in business longer than you have identified that there's a gap in the marketplace with regards to printing. And what they need that they don't actually have is a service provider for high quality commercial printing in the local area, okay? And so we evaluate this business idea based on 5 dimensions in terms of finances, time commitment, non-financial commitment, and risk and the competition. We look at our resources that we have access to in terms of financial and non-financial time, risk, and competition. So what resources do we offer in this regard? And then what are the resources that are required? And so the gap analysis identifies any gap between what we have and what we need, between what we offer in terms of our skills and what is required, therefore, what's missing, what's the deficit. For the flower shop, maybe our family has a history of doing well in florists, retail florists, and so you as the new business graduate in the family, they want you to go to the next town and do what they've done so well in this town. So again, we look at finances, non-finances, time, risk, and competition. We look at our skills and resources that we have to offer to make this a viable venture. Then we look at what's required and identify any deficit in between. Similarly, for a restaurant who's had to pivot towards a dine-in style of restaurant to now a takeout delivery only restaurant, COVID, as devastating as it has been, currently with nearly 180,000 deaths in the US, this devastating economic climate has actually identified or made possible business ventures that were not as possible or as viable in the previous context. So again, we look at our resources to get this restaurant or food delivery service up and running. We look at our financial resources, our non-financial resources. What time can we commit to make this venture viable? What's the risk involved? And how heavy duty is the competition or not? Once we identify the resources that we have access to, then we look at the resources that are actually required to make this happen, and then we identify any gaps in between. So these are the 5 aspects, dimensions, elements, categories, whatever you want to call them, that we should consider in our gap analysis. What financial resources do we have to draw on? What's our non-financial resources? Things like marketing expertise, for example. What time, are you working full time and then you have to moonlight? Or did you just lose your job and so you've got all the time that you can possibly muster, apart from sleeping time, apart from other family commitment time, like block out the time that is not negotiable, that you have to do something else, right? And then what time have you got to commit to this possible business venture? What's the risk involved? And it's not just financial risk that might be involved. There's social risk, emotional risk, physical risk, and competitive risk. And with regards to competitors, right, who's doing what in this market space? How are they positioned? And therefore, how do you need to be positioned to have a competitive advantage? So now, looking at each of these gap analysis categories in turn, the entrepreneurs must examine the amount of money required to start and operate this business and what resources do they bring to the table. In terms of time, what time can they commit? What is the time frame to make all of this happen? And what resources is needed to make this, what time is needed to make this business a success. In terms of non-financial resources, we're talking about resources that include your network, your business network, maybe your inner circle of influence. What about the physical location of the business? What about the online tools that will be required to establish and grow this takeout restaurant service? So the entrepreneur needs to be creative in this analysis of what resources they bring and what resources are needed. So we get creative with what we have to offer and how we can make it work. But regardless of our level of improvisation, there is an inherent risk associated with starting and operating a business. And this level of risk needs to be commensurate with the rewards of this individual being involved with this business. The specific risks to consider is the risk to your personal self, so like in terms of liability, financial risk, but again, social, emotional, physical risks. And then the business risk. What is the risk that you are actually undertaking here? Be aware, because if it's a risk, you have to be prepared to lose it. So 3 threats that we must recognize for each and every business are threats to the profit margin. In other words, not being able to achieve the profit margin that is sufficient to allow the business to thrive, to allow the business to attain substantial returns, right? This is a threat. There's also threats to sales generation, not being able to generate sufficient sales to make the firm profitable. And then there's risk to the operational financing. In other words, things cost more than what you might imagine. Things also take far more time than what you might expect. So these are generic threats to a business. Now, in terms of competition, competitors exist for every business. And if you tell me that you haven't got any competitors, to me, that says you haven't done your homework. You need to recognize your direct competition as well as your indirect competition. So think narrowly and think broadly in terms of who are your competitors, and then list the competitors that you see and consider why Well, consider the intensity of their competition. That's likely. In other words, are they a fierce competitor? Are they going to be heavy duty on the retaliation for you entering the marketplace, for example? You need to anticipate what the competition is going to do. All right. So here's graphics for the 3 business ideas that we were talking about just earlier with regards to the gap analysis. We've got our printing industry opportunity that the more experienced business people in our local business network have identified and recommended for us to investigate. Then there's the family florist business where they are set up and well established in one geography and want you, the brand new business graduate, to head to a different geography to do the same. And then there is the consideration of the COVID context where a restaurant needs to pivot and instead of in-house dining, focus on food delivery and takeout. Okay, so here's our gap analysis. For each of the 3 options that we are considering, we look at the same 5 categories to analyze our potential deficit. These 5 categories are finances, time, non-financial, risk, and competition. So for the printing shop idea, we have our savings, or maybe we have a business loan. We can commit full time to it, but we don't actually have the skills necessary in the printing technology. The risk is moderate, the competition is moderate. So if that's what we bring to the table with regards to this printing shop business idea, what is actually required? Well, we need to buy some expensive equipment. We need to be there full time. We need expertise that we don't actually have. The risk in terms of the resources that are required, it's quick or cheap. And then the competition are engaged in advertising and sales promotions. So then what is the gap? Well, there's a medium gap that needs to be closed with regards to financial resources. We can make the time commitment with what we've got to offer is in line with what is required. But with regards to non-financial resources that we have to offer, we're going to have to take on some training because there's a high gap there in terms of the expertise that's involved. And really, we don't have the advertising budget to keep pace with the competition. So the gap analysis for the printing shop identifies some medium to high deficit. For the flower shop idea, however, we've got our family in terms of financial support, and we have the equipment that they are going to share their equipment. In terms of time, we're going to work on it full time. We have our family support that is going to school us up on the design skills required. It's a low risk option because we have this family knowledge that is extensive. And even though the competition is strong, we have a distinct point of differentiation, and that is our brand name, our family reputation. And so in this way, the gap analysis shows a low level of deficit involved in taking on this business opportunity. For the restaurant idea, we need money and equipment that we don't have. We need skills in the food industry that are beyond where our focus has been previously. We do not have the level of risk tolerance that might be associated with this time and money investment. And because the competition is many and varied, that too means that we are operating with a high deficit. So in terms of our 3 business ideas, it seems the florist in a different geography is the way to go. Right, so that's the end of chapter 3. We began the chapter by identifying a systematic way to generate a list of potential business ideas. Then we looked at undertaking a gap analysis to examine the marketplace for these with regards to these business opportunities. And then we put these 2 things together. Generate the business ideas, evaluate the business ideas. The gap analysis shows us the way. All right, so there you go. There's chapter 3. Thanks again for your time, and I shall see you in part 2 coming soon. Bye.